Hello and welcome to the home of the Ghost Owl, and we're back for more Warhammer The Old World content, continuing with our look at the main rulebook, and now moving to part 2 of the movement phase, the phase that I consider the most complex of all 4 in my opinion. So now we've covered those charge reactions and the basics about the 4 sub-phases of the movement. We're now going to look at actually doing the movement itself. So starting off with the basic movement of a unit in the game. So models move forward the number of inches equal to its move characteristic. If there is more than one move characteristic in a unit, however, the whole unit will move at the speed of the slowest one. Units must move forward in a straight line unless performing a maneuver. Measurement is done from the front of the first base of the first rank. Okay, so now you've got your basic movement, you've then got marching. So what does marching do? Marching units double their movement. You will get triple movement if you're in marching column formation. Marching units can wheel to change direction, but cannot perform other maneuvers. Marching units cannot shoot or cast magic missiles or magical vortexes. And if within 8 inches of an enemy unit, that's not fleeing, you must first pass a leadership test to march. If you fail the leadership test, you may still move as normal, and but is still considered to have marched. So that's going to be a key one. So be careful about trying to march close to an enemy unit, because if you fail, you're still not going to be able to shoot or cast magic missiles or vortexes, but you won't have actually moved your march distance. So that is a key one. Now, next up, you've got maneuvers. This is how you're going to be changing direction or doing something more complex than just moving forward, because if you just keep moving forward, you might have an issue. So the first obvious one is wheeling. This is how you're changing direction while moving forwards. At the point of the wheel, the unit pivots around one of its front corners. Every model in the unit counts as having moved as far as the outside model. This is really important when you're thinking about how wide you're going to have your units, because it's all very well saying I'm going to have my units 10 models wide because I want the extra attacks and I want the extra models in the front rank and I'm worried about step up. But at the point you have to wheel, a 10-man wide unit is going to have to use a huge amount of its movement just to complete a basic wheel, because the guy right out there, he's actually moving a lot further, of course. So, like I've heard, there's been lots of talk, obviously, about how wide units are going to be, and because of the way the attacks work and step up works. And that's all fine, except for the fact that mobility and movement is key to this game. Absolutely key. And the wheel is the main way that you move and change direction. So very wide units are going to be very, very cumbersome and very unwieldy. And I think that's a real balance that you have to consider about how wide you want these units, depending on, what is it that unit's designed to do. Maybe if it's just an anvil unit, you don't care too much. If it's a shooting unit, you definitely don't care too much, right? And you want as many shooting as possible. But yeah, wide units and wheeling can be a real big issue. Now, after the wheel, you continue to move forward using any remaining movement, and a unit can wheel more than once if it is not charging. So if it's not charging, you can wheel to the left, move forward, wheel to the right, and as required. But yeah, I think that the width of the unit, critical on the wheel, because of how much movement you will lose from that outside model. So other maneuvers here. We got 5 other maneuvers you can do. Now, all models remain stationary and turn through 90 degrees or 180 degrees to face the side or rear. For every 90 degrees it turns, a unit uses 25% of its movement. So if you're going to turn your models through a complete 180 degrees, so they were facing forwards and now they're facing backwards in the same spot, that will cost it 50% of its movement. And then any command models, because you've now pivoted on the spot, you haven't pivoted, because you physically turned the models on the spot, the command models aren't going to be in the front rank, so you now need to make sure that you move those command models to the front rank. And also, because you might have had an incomplete rear rank, that's now going to be incomplete across multiple ranks, so you're going to have to resort that out so that the only incomplete rank is the rear rank. Okay, so you're not pivoting here, you've got your models, you're physically taking each model and turning it through 90 or 180 degrees to face a different direction. Now, the other maneuver you've got is you can just move backwards. So you can literally just walk backwards while still facing the same direction. However, you only get 50% of your movement. That kind of makes sense. You don't walk backwards as quick as you walk forwards. You can also move sideways. You kind of shuffle sideways and use 50% of that movement. That can be quite good if you're moving up into something that you might want to either block. You just need to shift sideways a bit. So move sideways. I actually tend to think that, move backwards, generally probably not as common. Move sideways can actually be quite useful. Now you've got redress the ranks. What does that mean? Well, units can redress the ranks, making the unit wider or deeper. So this is where you could or would be changing from a combat formation to a marching formation, for example. Now, for every 5 models you either move to or from the front rank, it costs 50% of your movement. So it doesn't matter if you move 1 model or 5 models, either adding it to the front rank or removing it from the front rank, it will cost 50% of movement. Models in the remaining ranks are then moved to match the front rank, obviously, because you need to always have the same number of models in each rank. Now, the last maneuver you can do is called a reform. Now, this is where a unit is sacrificing its entire movement. Right, you get no movement left, but you can pivot up to 180 degrees. So this is where the whole unit is actually pivoting round as opposed to the turn. It is different to the turn. And at the same time, you can rearrange the ranks as required. So there's no limit on, up to 5 models or anything like that. And up to 5 models isn't a limit, but it just depends upon how much movement you sacrifice. If you're going to be moving more than 5 models, you're probably better. You're into a reform at that point, right? And that's going to cost you all your movement. Now, the other thing you get with a reform is you can allow a different formation to be adopted. So maybe you're Knights of the Realm and you've been in a combat formation and you want to go into lance formation, well, you need to do a reform to do it. And you'll have also heard earlier, when you rally a unit in the strategy phase, you get a free reform, right? And that's what this is, right? So it can pivot up to 180 degrees and you can change the formation that it's in, right? Maybe it's going from combat order to skirmish or something like that, but you can completely change the formation. And pivoting, as opposed to turning, pivoting is represented by the entire unit spinning on the spot around its center. Okay. And then finally, the corner of a unit may cross the edge of a tabletop during any of these maneuvers, as long as at the end of its movement it is completely on the battlefield. So, of course, there's a rule that if you cross the edge of the battlefield, the unit would be destroyed. Now, say the unit can sort of turn or wheel through, part of the unit could go through the edge of the table. As long as it finishes completely on, it is absolutely fine. So there you go. That's the basics of movement, along with the basic maneuvers that you can do to change formation, turn left or right, wheel left or right as moving forward. Now, I say the most common things are going to be in here is going to be you're moving forward and you're marching, and then you're wheeling. Everything else is going to be more situational and as required. Like I say, moving sideways can be a useful one. Redress the ranks can be a good way of just slightly changing the width of a formation or depth of the formation if you need that extra rank, for example, for rank bonuses, while not sacrificing all of your movement. And that reform then, I say, being key not only for when you rally a fleeing unit, but also if you want to adopt a completely different formation, because maybe you've got a different target unit that you're up against, and you do want to be in a different way. So there you go. That's the main basics of physically moving your units around the battlefield. And as I said, I think the movement phase is the most complex and actually the most time consuming as well of all the phases. There's a lot to think about, a lot to do, and a lot to get right. And it's actually the crux of a rank and flank game, in my view, is the movement. So again, I hope you found this video useful. I know we're going through the rules and I'm going through it step by step, but I think that's the best way to do it. We will be getting on to the other phases. We'll be getting on to unique special rules and all sorts of other things. And once we complete the rule book, we will be getting on to faction focuses and all that good stuff. But right now, I think it's important we just sort of understand the rules, how they work, because I think that's important when you start getting into the faction focuses of how good a unit is or isn't, because you know how the rules work and how it's going to interface with those rules. If this video was useful, give it a thumbs up. If it wasn't, though, give it a thumbs down. But let me know why in the comments down below. I'm always looking for feedback and looking to improve. So, for example, recently I had some feedback that the thumbnails weren't that clear, and I've changed the way the thumbnails look so that there aren't images behind which are distorting or blocking out the words. So always looking for feedback. So if you do give it a thumbs down, please let me know why, and maybe we can improve the content for you. And again, that's for me the most important, is improving where possible. If you want to see more content though, please hit that subscribe button. It's totally free for you to do, and it's such a big deal for me, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And you've been watching The Ghost Owl, and I'll see you all very soon as we move into the next part of our movement phase series.